Wisdom Wave.
Welcome to the first episode of Wisdom Wave. I'm Kholod Lebzo, and I'll be your host. This is a podcast dedicated to amplifying voices, sharing experiences, and diving into the challenges and triumphs of women in academia. Wisdom Wave is more than just a podcast, though. It's a part of something bigger, DARBNA, which is a project designed to empower female academics in Jordan and beyond. DARBNA is the foundation, the movement, the space, and Wisdom Wave is here to make sure that the stories are heard. I'm honored here today to welcome Dr. Christina Schawbenland, a collaborator from the University of Bedfordshire, who has been an incredible part of DARBNA's journey. Welcome, Christina. It's nice to have you.
Thank you very much.
Christina, how do you feel about women in academia, and if they are supported or not, their challenges, their triumphs, how do you feel?
I think that is a huge question. Women have always played an enormously important role in academia from very, very early days. Sometimes that role has been acknowledged publicly, sometimes less so. In the UK, for example, until the mid-1900s, women were not always awarded degrees in universities. Oxford and Cambridge had educated women but did not always award them degrees. So there have been challenges for women as far as we can remember, really. But women have worked very hard to overcome those challenges. And I think we can see now that some of the most promising research and development is being carried out by women working in academia.
Yeah, so you're saying, in other words, that women have been facing challenges all over the world, in the UK, in Jordan, and everywhere else. Do you find any similarities from your experience, similarities in challenges here and there in the UK and in Jordan?
I think there are a lot of similarities, and probably more similarities than differences. One issue which we encounter in both countries is that a higher proportion of women enter into university. A higher proportion of women graduate, in the UK with higher performance in their degrees. That majority begins to dwindle when we go into postgraduate study, when we get into PhDs being awarded, still slightly more women, but fewer. When we then look at women moving into academia, men are beginning to take over. When we get to looking at how many women are professors, men have already vastly outstripped women. And when we look at management in universities, again, there are some wonderful examples of women who have made it to the most senior positions in universities, but far fewer. And I think the exact percentages may be different between the two countries, but that pattern is exactly the same.
Exactly. What's striking is that despite the different contexts in different places of the world, the patterns are similar. Also here we have the same exact issue. More women graduate than are working in the institutions, in educational institutions. Yes, indeed. And today of all days is a special day. You know, it's not just because we're launching this podcast and this is the first episode, but because it's March 8th and it's International Women's Day today. As well as, you know, since it's March and it's the National Mother's Day here in Jordan. So it is a day of recognition, it's a day of action, it is a day of recognizing the patterns and, you know, talking about solutions to face them. So, Christina, how do you see institutions supporting women in general, specifically mothers, because it is more of a delicate challenge to be a working mother, to balance research, academia, you know, if you're teaching, and also, you know, taking care of the kids.
Yes, yes. Well, again, I think there are probably more similarities than differences between the two countries. I think childcare is always a major problem. It's always a major issue in terms of the way it has an impact on women's careers. And one of the things that we noticed even during the COVID lockdown, when everybody was at home, everybody was working from home, all the studies showed that women were still taking a higher proportion of the responsibility for the childcare and the domestic care. And I have to say, in the UK, this may be a difference between the UK and Jordan. We have an aging population. I think you do not, but we do. And we have a real crisis around social care. So we have women being caught at both ends of the caregiving spectrum, where they may still have children that they're responsible for. They may also have older parents and relatives that they are responsible for. And legally, we have protections in place and we have rights in place which give men paternity leave, for example, in the UK. But we still see that men are less likely to take it up. And as I say, in terms of the studies of the apportionment of domestic work in the home, we still see, although we see slight increases in the amount of time that men spend in childcare and domestic work, we still see that women are bearing by large the largest part of that responsibility.
Because it's the social construct, no?
Absolutely.
It is expected of women to do this. It is expected for women who are mothers to take care of their children, even if she has a career.
Yes.
Because if both, I feel like, if both parents both have a career, the father's career or the husband's career is far more important or is given far more attention than hers. And God forbid she makes more money than him.
Indeed.
Because
which of course does happen.
It does happen.
Certainly does.
It does happen because women do succeed
Yes.
if you give them the environment to flourish.
Yes.
But yeah, it's a sad truth, and it's an international sad truth.
It is, and I think that you were asking before, what can institutions do? And I think one of the unintended but unhelpful consequences of lockdown and the move towards hybrid working, more working from home, I think the assumption always was that that would benefit women. Because again, if they're working in the home, they can balance tasks, they can balance their working day more easily. And so I think many of us thought that that might be the solution to some of these issues. But what we're seeing certainly in the UK is that the boundaries between work and non-work have to such a large extent dissolved as a result of being able to work online, that the ability to sort of turn off and say, I am not at work now, I am somewhere else, is becoming harder to sustain. And the demands of employers are also becoming harder to manage, because you may have emails at midnight, first thing in the morning, and that precious time to be working at home or working on your career, separating them out and making sure that other demands don't get in the way, is, I think, being constantly eroded. And I think that is one of the factors that is problematic, because what originally seemed to be a very positive solution has, I think, slightly rebounded in terms of its impacts. So when you ask what institutions can do, I think for those institutions that are positive about trying to improve the situation for women at work, I think there is a need for constant vigilance, that single solutions very rarely work. Sometimes they produce unintended consequences, sometimes they work in ways that we weren't expecting. So I think for any organisation to say, we have paternity leave in place, we have flexible working in place, we have a number of arrangements that will make it easier for people who are juggling, and including men who are juggling childcare responsibilities, of course. And we do need to come on to men's role in domestic work as well. But sometimes, however well-intentioned these measures are, they just somehow end up not quite working in the way that they were intended to. So I think constant vigilance is very important. And if universities and other institutions are really serious about improving situations for women, I think they should really look at having women's empowerment or gender empowerment programs, gender equality programs, monitoring strategies, where they are keeping a constant eye on how these different measures are impacting on men, impacting on women, impacting on people with care responsibilities or health issues, so that we can see how some of these trends are changing and some of these consequences are developing, even though some of them may have been unintended.
Yeah, so like, in other words, if institutions cannot actively take action, regular action, and not just, oh, we're gonna do this for a week or a month. No, it has to be monitored, and it has to be active, and it has to be regular for real change to take place.
Yes.
Otherwise, it would never. Yes. But coming on to fathers and their role at home, I don't think this applies to all men, obviously. It's just the social expectation.
Yes.
If you're finding it hard to juggle your role as a mother and as an academic, as a researcher, you will be expected to leave your job.
Yes.
Because you wouldn't leave your kids, would you? But fathers are expected, oh, well, get help, you know. Surely your wife is helping. Surely you can get a nanny. You know, which is sometimes said to women as well, but more to men, because men are expected to prioritize their job above all. No, even though there are cases of men who have quit their job to support their wives in their jobs, very, very few, though. very,
Yes.
very less common.
Yes, I think that's right. There may be some slight differences between Jordan and the UK in that I think it is much more accepted now that women will be working, and the majority of women do work. So in one sense, that battle has been won. But again, it's, as I was saying before, when the battle is won, it doesn't mean that there aren't consequences following behind. I think one of the things that's very important is that these stereotypes about who can do what do have consequences for both men and women, because the idea that men can't do domestic work, can't look after the children, is also quite problematic, because if we really want to see long-term social change, we need to see children growing up with good male role models just as much as they need good female role models. So if we want men who are caring and nurturing and are sharing in domestic labor and sharing in all of the work to do with creating and building a household, then we have to celebrate those men who are prepared to do it, and we have to make it possible for men to also not only take their share, but create and be the role models which will lead to the men of the future being more supportive of women and, in a sense, in their own sense, liberated to show their more caring sides.
That's so true, that's true. It's generational now, because
Yes.
every generation treats these stereotypes and these social constructs differently. But you've made me think of something, leadership.
Yes.
Leadership, it's, so let's say you're a woman, you go to school and you've graduated, you go to university and you've graduated, now what? You find a job, you get a job, and then what? You get a job in academia, you spend so many years, publishing research, getting ahead of everything. Also, you're creating a family, right? And then what? What happens for you to become a leader in your domain? Because how difficult is it for a woman to do it, and how difficult is it for a man to do it? Do they face the same challenges? Do they have the same difficulties? Or is it easier for a man to go higher up on the staircase to leadership, do you think?
Well, there clearly are women who have achieved great things. Yeah. And there are, both in the UK and in Jordan, there are a number of universities where women are in the very highest positions. So of course we can't say for a moment that those opportunities are not there for women. Statistically, of course, there are fewer women in those positions. Mm-hmm. So we need to be I said before, vigilant. We need to be looking very carefully at how those statistics are shifting. Are they improving? We need to look at issues around gender pay gap, for example, which is another really important issue. But I think in many situations, we also need to look at not only the constructs around women, but the constructs around leadership. How do we see leadership? What do we value in terms of leadership? What qualities do we look for in a leader? I think if you ask women to suggest leadership role models, and then ask them what qualities they value within those role models, you may see a rather different skill set emerging. And in fact, I used to teach a course a few years ago where I asked the students, both men and women, to identify women who had inspired them in their lives, and then to say what were those qualities that inspired them. And I think that those are really rather important things to think about, because a lot of, I don't want to essentialize or fall into the trap of stereotyping and saying women are kind and compassionate and men are aggressive, and I'm really not going down that route at all. But I think those stereotypes are very problematic. But if you look at the construct of leadership and say, what do you value in a leader? Do you value the leaders who are compassionate, who are caring and nurturing and supportive? Do you identify leadership in terms of people who may be less visible, but may be encouraging other people to take on positions of power, positions of responsibility? So where do you even identify leadership? Do you identify it just in the people who are sitting in particular positions, or do you identify it in terms of how things happen? Right. And who is responsible for supporting and bringing people together and moving issues on and identifying problems and suggesting solutions and noticing if people are not able to contribute at their greatest for whatever reason, finding solutions to people who may be struggling for whatever reasons. If you look at leadership in those areas, as well as in the more common ways of thinking about leadership, in terms of productivity and in terms of results, then I think you are already broadening your ideas about what leadership is. And I think the organizations that are more likely to promote women and more likely to support them when they have been promoted, because we all know, of course, of the people who are set up to fail, which doesn't, in the end, benefit anybody. I think those are where you see those qualities being more greatly valued. And I suppose for me, my background before I went into academia was working in the non-profit sector. And a lot of organizations in the non-profit sector are involved in caring in some form or other. And in the UK, at the time that I was involved, the majority of them were headed by women.
Oh, that's Indeed. Amazing. That is something to be truly proud of.
Indeed. Now, at that point, the very largest NGOs, charities, were headed by men. But that has also shifted. And some of the very large, very powerful, very influential organizations are headed by women. There are likely to be more women in senior positions, more women throughout the organization. So it is possible to build cultures that are very supportive of women. And I think it's no accident that those cultures are more likely to thrive in organizations where caring and respect and support are part of the DNA, because it's part of what those organizations are set up to do.
Standing for, yeah. I got goosebumps. I got goosebumps, seriously, I did. So we can say that if the world creates a comfortable environment for everyone to thrive, for everyone to succeed, then we as people, will all find benefit in that. We will all be benefited from that. There will be no hidden talents, no buried talents.
Absolutely.
We would all benefit. So this has been such an important conversation. And before we wrap up though, what's one piece of advice you would give to women in academia here in Jordan, back in the UK, and worldwide?
I think the most important thing of all is for women to support each other, support the sisters.
Yeah.
Years ago, I read something which I have never forgotten. It's a slight detraction, but I think it was a very interesting comment. Somebody was saying that if you build encouragement into everything that you do, it benefits everybody. Men benefit from being encouraged,
Yeah.
but it disproportionately benefits people who are underconfident or have experiences of being marginalized in the workplace. So it has a greater effect on people who are more in need of it. And yet it is also, in one sense, neutral in that everybody benefits from encouragement. So I think that building encouragement into the system, into the DNA of the way in which the organization works is immensely important. But particularly for women, particularly when women do get into positions of power, share it.
Share it.
Look for opportunities to support and encourage other women, not at the expense of very talented men, of course not. But if there are ways of encouraging, offering opportunities, promoting women who are doing excellent work, showcasing women's excellent work, it has a ripple effect. It has the effect of changing attitudes, changing people's levels of awareness. And of course, for individuals, it is immensely powerful. I sometimes organize a series of research webinars at work, and I am more likely to look for women speakers, because I know that in conferences, men are almost always overrepresented in terms of people giving talks and giving speeches. Fine, their work is undoubtedly very important and very exciting, but are we hearing from the women who are also doing very important and very exciting work? So if we have access to these opportunities, are we supporting each other in making the most of those? I think that would be my single point of advice.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Christina, for joining us and being a part of this launch episode. We've had such a fantastic time here.
Thank you.
And for everyone listening, Wisdom Wave is just getting started. If you're a female academic, we hope that you're watching this. Stay connected, keep pushing forward, and most importantly, support each other. Stay tuned for more conversations that matter. See you next time on Wisdom Wave.
Wisdom Wave.